Hello, hi, welcome to my first video. My name's Katie, and I figured that I'd like to start making videos so that I could show people the sorts of video games that I find really interesting. I work as a video game journalist, so yes, I write about video games all the time, and in my years doing it I've found that there are some games which are just better seen than written about, or which are very, very interesting to analyze when watched, in addition to reading about them. This, I think, is one of those games. So this is Action Painting Pro by Ian MacLarty, who is a Melbourne-based indie developer. He's also worked on games such as Boson X, which you might have played before if you're into indie stuff. Anyway, this game came out in early 2014, and I just fell in love with it on my very first playthrough. So I'd like to walk you through the mechanics and point out some of the symbolism present that I think makes this game so fascinating and so interesting to play and to analyze. So as you can see, it's a platformer, and it starts out in a very sparse kind of way. It's just black and white, and there are these flashing objects all over the screen. So I'll pick up this blue one, and you'll notice that my picking up of the objects refills the constantly depleting bars in the upper right corner. Those bars are free resources represented only by icons: a heart, a $sign, and a light bulb. And I find it quite interesting, and I think it's quite clever that these resources have not been labelled. It really opens it up to interpretation. So when I first played this game, I was like, oh, yeah, obviously the heart means passion, and the $sign means money, and the light bulb means inspiration. Like, I think the $sign and the light bulb are actually pretty straightforward in what you might interpret them to be. But I think that when it comes to the heart symbol, there's a lot more ways you can interpret that. So from the outset, I always thought passion. Heart stands for passion. It didn't even occur to me there might be different ways of interpreting that heart. But in October of this year, Ian MacLarty demoed this game in front of a live audience at an event called Free Play Parallels. And during that presentation, he actually mentioned that the heart might not mean passion. It could mean something like health. Obviously, you need good health to, be a good working artist. Or it could be the love that another person has for you. Like, how far can you get in life if no one loves you? So I think those are really interesting things to consider in a way. And yeah, and I think it's really shown that the fact I interpreted it as passion shows what my struggles have been in my own creative process, my own creative history, creative background. So I think that's really cool, and I'd actually be really curious to hear what other people interpret these symbols to mean. So anyway, another thing I wanted to point out is, yes, obviously you can see these platforms shift slightly every time I pick up a new resource or one of the new art tools. What I'd like to point out is that every time these platforms shift, it's a pretty significant difference, but the new platforms that emerge are never out of reach. You're never stranded. You are never stuck. You don't have to plunge to your death if you're careful. And I think that's really cool. I think that's something that definitely needs to be kept in mind. A few years ago, I was working for a website called GameSpy. I was doing news on the weekends for them, and I loved that gig. It kept me pretty well supplied with money. I just loved writing about video games, of course, and I got really comfortable in that job, I think. So it was really depressing when one day I woke up on a Friday morning to discover that the website had closed down overnight. I mean, shit happens in this industry. And how does that relate to this game? Well, see these shifting platforms? I think it was like that. I mean, when I woke up and learned, oh hey, I don't have a job anymore, At the time I was like, no, what will I do with myself? Am I just going to plunge to my death? Or am I just going to find my way to a new platform? Now obviously I survived because I'm here making this video. So I think that's I like to think that this video portrays creative struggles in quite a truthful way. Like, it's not cool when, you know, shit happens, when things change around you, when landscape, like, opens up beneath you. But you're never stranded. If you're careful, you can get your way out of this mess, and you can continue on. So, yeah, I think that's another thing that's really cool about this game. It's another thing I love about it. The fact that, hey, you know, plunging to your death, like I did just then, it can happen, but it doesn't have to happen. But even when it does, you can just start again. So, yeah, as you can see, as I move, as I pick up these resources, I'm changing not just the landscape, the platforms, but I'm also changing the background music, which is interesting. I'm not much of a musician. I mean, I love listening to music, obviously. But I guess this is kind of a cool way for me to do things that I couldn't ordinarily do. So in my case, compose music or make interesting paintings. And I really like that my input for these things is the movements of a little dude in a platformer game. I think that's super cool and super symbolic. I really enjoy that. And I do want to point out that sometimes you can make ugly art. Like, for example, this is not one of my best Action Painting Pro paintings. This is very toddler-like. And I want to say that, yeah, sometimes you make some pretty shitty paintings. But hey, not all works of art are the Mona Lisa. Not all works of art turn out amazing. I know as a writer, I have written some great articles. And I've also written some not so great articles. I've, you know, getting too tight to a deadline or whatever, not giving yourself enough time to finish an article. Yeah, you make mistakes. You produce some shitty work sometimes. And yeah, I think that it's kind of cool that the process is randomized in this game. It, again, speaks for the creative process. I think I'll leave this here for now, but I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts, both on Action Painting Pro and your thoughts on my thoughts of Action Painting Pro. I would be especially curious to hear what all those symbols might mean to you, and whatever your own creative processes might be, and how they might be represented by the mechanics of this game. So, yeah, you can download Action Painting Pro for free from Ian MacLarty's website. I will pop a link to that in the description of this video for you. And yeah, like I said, I'd love to chat about this. So, thank you for joining me on my first video. Please get in touch. You can email me or leave a comment on this video, or you can follow me on Twitter. I'm @desensitization, spelled the British English way. Thank you again so much for joining me on my first video, and yeah, I hope you'll stick around and we can play more games together. Thank you.